Everyone in the company was shipping me and the CEO. To stop the rumors, I posted on my moments late at night. Just got married. Busy, don't at me. Unexpectedly, the CEO followed up right after with his own post. Just got married. Wife's busy. Don't at me. Rumors had been swirling, both openly and subtly, that I was dating my boss. In an effort to protect my job and stop the gossip from reaching Min Yoongi, who supposedly had a longtime first love, I tried to shut everything down with a simple post. But I hadn't expected him to add fuel to the fire himself. Within a minute of Yoongi's post, the company group chat exploded to 99+ messages. Our ship is real. Who else is screaming? Shy little bunny and cold abstinent wolf? Secretary ex-boss. Forbidden office romance. Count me in. The endless barrage of messages made my heart sink, especially because Min Yoongi was also in that group. Very few people knew the real reason Yoongi had always kept his distance from women. He had a childhood sweetheart. He was loyal, devoted, waiting for her return. And how did I know? Well, embarrassingly, I've had a one-sided crush on Yoongi since we were students. Of course, I know the inside story, and I also know that this rumor was trampling right on his bottom line. I smiled bitterly. This kind of shipping everything only hurts me. I could practically see my termination notice waving at me from afar. Finally, someone tried to stop the flood of speculation and blessings. It's so late. Everyone, stop messaging. I nodded furiously in front of my phone, silently thanking that kind soul. But the very next message knocked the breath out of me. Boss and Mrs. Boss are busy chatting tonight. Let's not disturb them. #smirk. So thoughtful. Thanks for the express pass to unemployment. Frustrated, I scratched my head when another notification popped up. It was from Yoongi. I opened it with dread only to see something even more shocking. Min Yoongi, good night, everyone. No attendance penalties for being late tomorrow. Before my brain had time to reboot, a private message arrived from him. Bring your household registration and ID tomorrow. You'll need them. Of course, he wanted me to come in for official termination procedures. How considerate. Otherwise, I wouldn't even know those documents were needed to quit. I woke up early, picked a long white dress, and put on light makeup. Even if I were getting fired, I wanted to go out with dignity. Just as I stepped out the door, a bright red Maserati pulled up in front of me. The window rolled down slowly, revealing a jawline sharper than my life plans. It was Min Yoongi. He was wearing a crisp white shirt. It had been 11 years since I'd last seen him in white. And in that moment, he looked just like he had back then. A cold, distant god untouched by the mortal world. He frowned slightly and spoke in a low voice. YN, do you have everything? I nodded blankly and got in the car. When his dry, emotionless tone reminded me of reality, I quietly withdrew my hand from the front passenger door and walked to the back seat. Yoongi was my boss, and today he came to drive me to get fired. But as soon as I got in the car, Yoongi, normally silent, started a conversation. Looks like you know where we're headed today. Of course, boss, I already guessed last night that I'd be fired. What I didn't expect was such full-service termination with the boss himself coming to escort me. So, are you asking if I'm willing? As if I had a choice. The boss shows up himself. How could I possibly say no? Of course, I'm willing. Whatever you say. Good. That was oddly cheerful. And based on my 6 months working under him, I knew one thing for sure. Yoongi never sounded this pleased. I thought back over those 6 months of working as his secretary. I had been careful, professional, never let my personal feelings interfere, never crossed any lines. And yet, the idea of firing me made him happy. He must really hate me. If people were spreading rumors about him being in love with someone he didn't know or care for, of course, he'd want to set the record straight, especially someone as loyal and self-controlled as Yoongi. Suddenly, Yoongi said, "We're here." The Civil Affairs Bureau. I looked up, confused. Wait, we need to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get fired. He looked at me and said, "We're getting married." A few minutes later, I walked out of the office with a red marriage certificate in my trembling hands. After 11 years of secretly loving Yoongi, I had married him. Why did he choose to marry me? That was the only question looping in my head. Yoongi glanced at the red booklet in his hands, face unreadable. Then he spoke lightly. I needed a Mrs. Min to cancel my family's arranged marriage plans. Now that everyone already thinks we're married, we might as well roll with it. Saves a lot of trouble. He pulled out a card and handed it to me. Don't worry. As Mrs. Min, I'll treat you well. All the properties under my name will be transferred to you today. Use this card freely. And if you have other requests, just say so. What was I expecting? A fairy tale. I had known him for 11 years. He had only known me for 6 months. Sorry, boss. I wasn't thinking clearly. I have no interest in being your business partner. Let's divorce. Yoongi's expression turned impatient. The air pressure dropped sharply around him. There's a 2-month cooling-off period. YN, I suggest you think carefully about what I'm offering you. Then please come back in 2 months. Yoongi hated complications. He never tolerated disruptions to his plans. Sure enough, his face fell and he turned to leave. But a few steps later, he stopped. Wait here, I'll go get the car. After adjusting my emotions, I snapped back into professional mode. Boss, the board meeting is at 2 p.m. Site visit with the partner company at 4 and at 6. Yoongi tugged at his tie, visibly annoyed. Cancel everything. You're coming with me to an event. Pick how you want to call me, Yoongi, or hubby. Yes, boss. Yoongi was a notorious workaholic. He never cancelled meetings for anything, which meant this event must be with someone important, and if he wanted me to call him Yoongi or hubby, he wanted to make our relationship public to someone specific. I already had a guess. And when we arrived, it was confirmed Park Yoona, his childhood sweetheart, was back from overseas. The moment I saw her, I instinctively glanced at my dress. A discounted piece from some random store, still, it was the best I had. She, on the other hand, wore the latest limited edition designer dress from abroad. Wherever she went, she was the center of attention, in high school and still now. I nervously looked at Yoongi beside me. As expected, his gaze was locked on her. Excuse me, boss. I'm not feeling well. I think I'll go. I clutched the hem of my dress. Just as I was about to turn, a warm, strong hand wrapped around my waist. Stay with me a while. I'll take you home soon. His low, gentle voice brushed against my ear and calmed my turbulent heart. We walked together toward Yoona. She tucked her hair elegantly behind her ear and smiled. As we approached, she reached out with a graceful gesture. Every movement was poised and refined, but her eyes never left Yoongi. Not even for a second. Yoongi, long time no see. Yoongi didn't shake her hand. He merely gave a faint and then turned to look at me. Having accompanied Yoongi to numerous formal events, I understood the basics of high society etiquette. And I understood what he meant. He wanted to use me to make his beloved Yoona jealous. I smiled politely and reached out to take the hand Yoona had extended midair. Mississippi Park, I'm sorry. My husband is under strict wife management. Please accept my apology on his behalf. With that, I picked up the wine glass beside me and downed it in one gulp. Yoona let out a soft laugh. Miss Kim, you and I are quite alike in many ways, even our names. Mississippi Park, it's an honor to be compared to you. I forced a smile to hold myself together. Just one offhand comment, and the confidence I had barely pieced together crumbled completely. Yoona and YN, what she meant was painfully obvious. Yoongi had found someone who even had a similar name to replace her, but there could only be one Mrs. Min, and in my heart, I was no substitute for anyone. After a long silence, Yoongi finally spoke. My wife isn't feeling well. Mississippi Park, please excuse us from your welcome dinner. A flicker of satisfaction rose in my chest. Was he standing up for me? But it vanished just as quickly. More likely, he just didn't want Yoona to get the wrong idea. I thought Yoona would try to stop us, but she didn't say a word. She simply watched us leave, calm and composed, as if everything was already in her grasp. And maybe it was. Yoona had every reason to feel confident. She and Yoongi were childhood sweethearts. Their families had been close for generations. The two had even been betrothed since birth. If she hadn't insisted on studying abroad and quarreled with Yoongi back then, she would already be Mrs. Min today. And me, a girl with no parents, no background, what right did I have to stand against her? If I didn't happen to look like Yoona or share a similar name, I probably wouldn't have even made it past the first round of interviews. Mrs. Min, what are you thinking about? I snapped out of it. Boss, we can still make the afternoon appointments. Should I reschedule? The show was over, time to return to reality. Reschedule. Yoongi spat the word out, clearly irritated, then drove off alone. I stood there, dazed. But reason quickly overtook my sense of humiliation, and I held back my tears. Kicking off my heels, I followed the GPS to the nearest bus stop. As the saying goes, when your luck is down, nothing goes smoothly. A few steps later, it started pouring rain without warning. I looked up at the sky and silently whispered, thanks, heavens, for the well-timed rain. Now no one will notice I'm crying. Beep beep beep, a car horn startled me and I quickly moved aside to make room. I turned ready to apologize to the driver and instead fell into a warm embrace. I didn't need to look up. The faint scent told me it was Yoongi. Sorry, boss. I got your shirt dirty. I tried to steady my voice, but I couldn't hide the quiver in my tone. Without saying a word, Yoongi picked me up in his arms steadily, securely. Mrs. Min, let's go home. He said it softly, so softly it felt like a secret meant only for the two of us. And for just a moment, I truly felt like the only Mrs. Min in his world. At the entrance to my building, boss, you can just drop me off here. He nodded, but didn't actually listen. He drove straight into the underground parking lot. Boss, really, it's fine. I can go up myself. Once again, just lip service. He followed me step by step slowly. What is going on? Why does Yoongi seem like a completely different person today? Was he planning to move in? No way. This was the man who'd kept himself chaste for over a decade for Park Yuna. Boss, I'm here. Good night. I pointed at my door. Yoongi, staring at it, said nothing. In that brief silence, I ran through 100 different excuses in my head to stop him from staying the night. Finally, he opened his mouth. Not going to invite your husband in for a bit. Without thinking, I blurted out the most reasonable excuse I'd come up with. I got soaked in the rain, feeling a little dizzy. Not convenient. The moment I said it, I regretted it. Yoongi raised an eyebrow, clearly puzzled, but then realization dawned in his eyes, and he began stepping toward me, one slow step at a time. I backed up until I hit the wall. Mrs. Min, would you care to tell me what you're thinking? And no, nothing really. We're legally married now. If you want. His gaze dropped to my lips, then continued downward. No, I don't want to. Panicked, I used my fingerprint to unlock the door and slipped inside like a runaway criminal. Today's Yoongi wasn't the Yoongi I knew. He felt like a completely different person. Did something happen with Yuna? I stared at the red marriage certificate on the table. I still couldn't believe I had actually married the man I fell for at first sight. That first sight felt like it was just yesterday. It was the first day of high school. There was a tradition. Upperclassmen gave tours to incoming freshmen. I was rebellious, stubborn, and not a fan of rules. So, after roll call, I snuck out of the group and wandered the campus on my own. I ended up in front of a teaching building. From inside, I heard beautiful piano music drifting through the windows. Drawn in, I followed the sound until I found myself in front of a classroom. Inside, a boy in a white shirt was playing the piano, his back facing the door. I stood there mesmerized, completely unaware of the threshold at the door. I tripped and fell hard. The noise broke the song. I scrambled to my feet and bowed an apology, flustered. Are you okay, freshman? A clear, clean voice cut through the air. I looked up instantly. The sunlight poured in from behind him, outlining his frame like a halo. The breeze tousled his hair, and in that moment, my heart fluttered wildly. Love at first sight, born on the wings of youth. What's your name? Hi, freshman. I'm Yoongi Min from Class 1, Grade 11. I muttered under my breath. Min Yoongi. What a nice name. It sounds like something out of a novel. If only I could be the heroine. My face flushed red from my own thoughts. Afraid he'd notice, I turned and ran for my life. Just as I was leaving that day back in high school, I bumped into a tall, confident girl with a high ponytail and a commanding presence. Later, I learned her name, Park Yuna, and she was widely known as Yoongi's girlfriend. They were both born into elite families. I, on the other hand, was just the daughter of a nouveau rich businessman. My mother passed away during the summer after my entrance exams. My father? He only cared about his business. In order to get his attention, I went from being the well-behaved girl everyone praised to a rebellious troublemaker. Then, in my second year of high school, my father went bankrupt and died of depression. I became a true orphan, unwanted and alone. The money he left barely covered my tuition through graduation. After that, I had no more room to act out. I was placed in a welfare home and transferred to a rougher public school. Looking back, I was grateful I hadn't humiliated myself in front of Yoongi back then. We were never meant to be part of the same world. But a person you fall for at first sight, it's hard to stop loving them. I worked hard to build a better life for myself, hoping that maybe someday I could stand beside him. The year after I finished grad school, I submitted my resume to Yoongi's company. Whatever the reason, I got hired and became his secretary. In the 6 months I'd worked beside him, I'd never made any serious mistakes. I believed it was my ability that earned the job, not some resemblance to Yuna. Even though our relationship had technically changed, the way we interacted hadn't. That moment at the Civil Bureau still felt like a ridiculous dream. Boss, the partner company will be sending their new director to the meeting today. Do you want to attend in person? No. Yoongi didn't even hesitate. Normally, I wouldn't have mentioned such a routine meeting, but today's guest was Mississippi Park. His pen froze mid-stroke. He lifted his head slightly, then lowered it again, continuing to write. I know. Cancel tonight's gala. I already have an appointment with Director Park. Yes, sir. I couldn't help but laugh at myself. Yuna was the director. Of course, he knew she was coming. I was trying to act clever and only ended up embarrassing myself. But tonight's gala is with President Bung. His project is One Young Group is also bidding on. So, before I could finish, Yoongi slammed his pen onto the table with a sharp crack. Whatever. If you want to go, then go. Understood. I'll leave you to it. He was clearly upset. Why? Was it because I was interfering with his date with his old flame? Since Yuna returned, Yoongi, once the definition of a workaholic, had broken his own rules multiple times. Maybe he only chose to marry me because he didn't know she was coming back. Now that she had, he was probably regretting that rushed marriage. Thankfully, it was only for 2 months. Once the cooling-off period ended, I'd return the title of Mrs. Min to Yuna. That evening, Yoongi left work early. Many coworkers saw him leave with Yuna. And of course, they came to me first, phones in hand, photos loaded. YN, aren't you married to the boss? I forced a smile. Yes, I did get married, but not to the boss. Anyway, the marriage won't last long. No need for outsiders to know. Then, do you know who the real Mrs. Min is? I guess it's Director Park. Just like that, the topic shifted. Everyone slowly moved away from me and began discussing Yuna and Yoongi. I mumbled an excuse. Sorry, I've got to run a quick errand for a project. But in truth, no one noticed. They were too deep in gossip. I slipped away quietly. That stupid gala. I hadn't even planned on going, but during a conversation with President Bung earlier that day, he'd warned me if I bailed again, he'd cancel our cooperation. He said as Yoongi's secretary, all I had to do was show up, drink a little, and it'd count as Yoongi attending. Maybe we'd even secure the contract. After weighing my options, I agreed. A few drinks for $1 million contract. I get a percentage and earn a few tens of thousands. For someone desperate for money like me, that deal was worth it. Standing outside the private room, I took a deep breath, pulled out my best professional smile and pushed the door open. YN, being late means a penalty drink. The greasy middle-aged man in the center smirked, signaling the waiter to pour. President Bung, 1 drink isn't enough to show your sincerity. How about you down 3 instead? I didn't know if the waiter had been warned in advance, but the glasses were filled to the brim. 3 drinks in quick succession burned down my throat. Now that's sincerity. I pulled out the contract from my bag and handed it over. Shall we take a look? No rush. He signaled the waiter to pour another. Having worked with Yoongi for 6 months, I knew this type well. Whoever drinks best wins the deal. I'll drink. You take your time. YN's got a great tolerance. And you know what they say, how you drink reflects your character. Let's see how good your character really is, and then I'll consider signing. Fair enough. I downed another glass. 3 rounds in, my stomach was churning. I excused myself and rushed to the bathroom, barely holding back the urge to vomit. Luckily, I'd taken anti-hangover pills beforehand, so I wasn't too dizzy. Babe, are you okay? I saw your message and came right away. It was Mina, my college friend. 2 women from out of town leaning on each other. We'd become close. She happened to be dining in the same restaurant that night, so I'd asked her to wait around just in case I needed help. I'm fine, Mina. I could still drink 300 more rounds with those guys. After throwing up, I felt a little better. I patted her shoulder to reassure her and returned to the room. President Bang was already slurring. A few more drinks and he'd be done. I reopened the contract and handed him a pen. President Bang, shall we sign? Sure, but there's still 1 bottle left. Waste not, right? I'll drink. Without hesitation, I picked up the bottle and drank straight from it. Just 1 more step and the commission would be mine. Bang. The door slammed open. Everyone turned except me. I was still halfway through the bottle, afraid to stop. A second later, the bottle was snatched from my hands. YN, that's enough. I was pulled into a warm embrace. A voice trembled above my head, gentle and unfamiliar. I wanted to push him away, but had no strength left. Don't be scared, YN. It's me, Jimin. Park Jimin, one of my only 2 true friends. We met after I transferred schools in high school and later went to the same university. Hearing his voice calmed me. Still, I was married now and appearances mattered. I gently pushed him away, steadying myself with the table. He kept one hand on my arm, ready to help. The contract, it's not signed yet. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. His tone was as gentle as if he were comforting a child. President Park, I didn't know Miss Kim was with you. President Bang sobered up instantly, stuttering in panic. Sign it. Jimin gave the order. No room for discussion. Yes, sir. The man scurried to sign the contract and handed it to me like a scared schoolboy. Thank you. It was the first time I'd ever seen a client hand over a contract so humbly. It felt weird. President Park and Mrs. Park, please take care on your way out. No, I'm not his wife. Just as I tried to explain, Jimin, stone-faced a second ago, suddenly broke into a grin and dragged me away. He didn't even give me a chance to respond. I knew Jimin came from money, but I didn't realize it was that kind of money, the kind that made a much older, greasy CEO bow and stammer in front of him. Still a little dizzy, I clutched the signed contract with a huge grin. Grinning, I gave Jimin a hearty smack on the back. President Park, if you told me about your family fortune earlier, I might have applied to be your secretary instead. Jimin winced. Ow, he hissed, but didn't say anything else. He just smiled at me. Actually, I have a position that's perfect for you. Flexible hours, high pay, zero accountability. Interested? Of course. What position? Wife. I burst out laughing and slapped his back again and again. 6 months apart, and now you're funny, too. I laughed so hard I felt a rush of acid rise from my stomach. Wait. I'm going to throw up. I staggered over to a trash can and started heaving. YN. A chill ran down my spine. Was I hallucinating from the vomiting? Why did I hear Yoongi's voice? YN. Yoongi's voice dropped an octave cold and low. Oh no, not a hallucination. I turned around stiffly and saw him standing not far away. His brow was tightly furrowed, veins bulging on his forehead. His lips were pressed into a thin line and his hands clenched tightly by his sides. Jimin, who had been supporting me, immediately straightened up. Gone was his playful tone. He stepped protectively in front of me and stared down Yoongi with quiet hostility. YN, who is this guy? My boss. Jimin blurted out without thinking. What kind of jerk boss sends a girl to drink with sleazy men? Fire him. My heart stopped. Jimin really had no filter. Thankfully, Yoongi didn't react to the insult. He just stared at me with simmering anger. Come here. Jimin blocked me again. Why should she? Because I'm her husband. Yoongi's voice was cold, his eyes locked on me. Mrs. Min, aren't you going to explain to your friend that you're married? Jimin looked at me in disbelief, eyes dimming slightly. Yeah, we got married yesterday. Thanks for helping tonight, Jimin. I'm heading home. Good night. Jimin loosened his clenched fists. When he saw me walk toward Yoongi, he said nothing more and quietly left. Yoongi was furious tonight. Not that I had any idea what exactly he was mad about. Mrs. Min, home. That was the only thing he said the entire ride to my apartment. Maybe it was the alcohol, but I was angry, too. Tears were threatening to spill, and I forced them down. Yoongi, always perceptive, noticed something was wrong. But instead of asking gently, he snapped. YN, what now? That made it worse. Why do you care? I shouted. He paused, perhaps realizing his tone was off. Then, in a much softer voice, he said, argue if you want, but let's do it inside, okay? It's the middle of the night. We'll disturb the neighbors. Fine. He had a point. All right, get in then. Yoongi entered first, casually surveying the apartment. I'm tired. Let's argue tomorrow. Where's the bedroom? Without thinking, I pointed it out. It wasn't until he stepped inside that my brain kicked in. Wait a minute, I'm the one who wanted to fight. I stormed into the bedroom after him, eyes wide, trying my best to glare. Yoongi stood silently watching me. His gaze, soft, deep, was the same one he used when looking at Yuna. A look I could only describe as tender. Was he thinking of her again? We stared at each other for a long, long time. Caught in the storm of jealousy and raw emotion, I finally lost control. I grabbed his tie, tiptoed, and kissed his lips.